Hey guys, welcome to the Nate Whitson podcast. I'm your host and super grateful for you listening today. Make sure if you enjoyed today's conversation, you hit the subscribe button, click the notification so you don't miss upcoming ones, and then share it. If this is a conversation that's worthwhile for you and you feel like, man, that was really helpful, then share it. That really helps us to get the message out to more men. One of our missions here, though, is to help Christian men get unstuck. I use that language a lot here, where you kind of feel like you're at a point in life where you're stuck and maybe life is complacent and you feel like you're just missing that traction that you want to have. And yet you want to be a better husband, a better father, a better follower of Jesus. And you're trying to figure out, how do I get that mojo back, that momentum? Well, if that's you today, if you're listening to this and you're like, man, that is me. I just kind of feel like I'm going through the motions, kind of feel stuck. I'm not sure where to go, kind of missing purpose and drive and energy and all those things. I mean, I think today's conversation is going to be for you. So my guest is a special guest. His name's Chris Johnson. Chris is the author of a book right here. If you're watching online, you can see it's called Rest, Eat, Move. You have the power to feel your best. Chris has also written 6 best-selling books. This is his most recent one. He spent the last 35 years building and implementing health and wellness programs for individuals and organizations. He pioneered one of the first $1 million personal training programs in the world at the Michigan Athletic Club in the early 90s. And he's done over 30,000 one-on-one training sessions. That kind of blows my mind. Today, Chris travels the world delivering inspirational keynote presentations. He's the CEO and founder of On Target Living, whose mission is to transform people's health. Chris, it's an honor to have you here. Thanks for joining the show.
My pleasure, Nate. How are you?
I'm doing great. So excited to have this conversation. I really believe in what you're doing, and I can't wait for us to get into it here.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I want to say this before we jump into the questions. I just want to say this for men that are listening. My background in this ministry that I started, Chris and I were just kind of saying this off record. Like, he didn't really start his thing to become what he is today, best-selling author, international traveler. It was just like, I'm passionate about helping people feel their best. Well, for me, I started this ministry because I was feeling my worst. So maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of found myself early 40s. Like, the brain fog was thick. I was forgetting people's names, thinking like, man, I think I'm going to have dementia or something, like legit nervous about missing things mentally. I was probably the heaviest I've ever weighed. Just felt spiritually, physically, mentally like something's wrong, complacent, passive, and very stuck. That's just how I felt. I felt very stuck. And what's interesting to me is the most spiritual thing I did to get back into living my best life was to start physically doing something. This connection for me of I kind of had this wake up call almost, where God was like, hey, Nate, you're out of the fight, man. And it's time to get back into it. And that was why we call this Get in the Fight, because that was a really clear message for me. But I remember reading John 10:10. In the Bible, there's this really famous passage where Jesus says, I've come that they might have life and have it abundantly. But when you look around at my life at that point and so many other men today, we're living anything but abundant. We're very weak and passive and tired and all of these things. And so there is this interconnectedness that I want to kind of lead this into, Chris, for you. Like, it was so true in my story that the most spiritual thing I could do was get in better shape. And there was a momentum and a progress that was like one literal baby step forward. Like, I was like, you know what? I can do 5 push-ups and 5 sit-ups and walk to the end of the road and back. And that literally changed everything for me. So with kind of that as the background of my own personal journey with this, Chris, can you talk a little bit about what you see and know about this interconnectedness between like the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, and how health and physical wellness impacts all of those?
Well, it's interesting you say that. My son and I wrote a book titled Capacity, and many organizations, back in the day, are like, we'll get to the health and the wellness thing when we have time, which never happens.
Yeah.
But then when you start looking at it from a business standpoint, imagine if you had more capacity, you could give more, you could have more, and most importantly, you when you share this, you can't be your best if you're not optimal. And so that's really, we started looking at it differently. a lot of times when I talk about exercise or, the rest, eat, move, that's a sequence, but, motion creates positive emotion. You
Mhm.
said if I just did that 5 push-ups and I walked to the mailbox and back, just that movement starts creating that momentum. And I think that's where people get paralyzed. They think they have to do everything. They have to climb Mount Everest. And reality is they have to just take that step. I'm going to drink a little bit more water. But really behind the curtain is what you're talking about is when you take care of the physicality, then everything starts to getting better. I mean, God gave us this amazing, you know, resource here, and it's amazing. You would never treat, I always tell people, if you had $1 million racehorse, how would you treat your $1 million racehorse?
Mhm.
You wouldn't give them an energy drink and too much caffeine and don't let them sleep and tie them up all day. So it's no different. And so
Yep.
that's where sometimes we miss the connection of it's all interconnected. And with all that stuff, we did a podcast yesterday. My son and I, we talked about rest and space and stress, and 80% of our healthcare costs today are stress related, and they're a lot different than they were, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 80 years ago. We're facing much more challenging, but a big part of that is that mentally we're not healthy. And
Mhm.
so when you get the physicality, it's all connected. The oceans are all connected. So you're
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I sat down with my doctor and I was like, something's wrong with me mentally. And he's like, well, if you know you, Nate, then yeah, you're mentally challenged, and kind of joked about it. But the reality was there was something that felt way different than before. And I was really shocked at the way it just cleaned up pretty quick.
Mhm.
And I say that because I think, and you kind of mentioned like where we're at, and the medical field would, most doctors, my doctor is not this way, just to prescribe medicine. But somebody could have easily just said, you know what you need, and given me something for mental
Oh,
clarity. How
and
sad.
again, your message is, if you looked at, the body is designed to heal and self-correct,
Hmm.
but we don't really give it that power. You cut your hand, and we all know your hand's going to heal. So what if you put your body and your mind and everything else in a better position? We have these gifts. That's why the tagline in my book is "You have the power to feel
Hmm.
your best." So you got to
Hmm.
take some ownership in that. You can do all these other things over here, but you got to take some ownership in that, and that takes effort. And I think that's
Right.
and part of what I always like to talk about is, as and the journey is the best part.
Hmm.
I've competed in 10 bodybuilding contests since 1985. I turned 68 in the fall. It's not about getting on stage and winning a trophy or a sword or whatever. It's the journey. And so I think
Yeah.
that's what I talk to people about their health is enjoy the journey. You don't have to get
Hmm.
militant about it. Just, one thing at a time, but the fruits are incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I'm going to hold this up for those that can actually see it. This is what the book looks like, but it says you have the power to feel your best. And you talk about that accountability piece, like self accountability, and recognizing like, yeah, you got to do something about it. Like, there's a lot in the book, but like, what is it that you hope the book, if you had to summarize it, like, what is it what's the takeaway? What's the main reason you wrote this, and hope that people reading it will take away from it in terms of having that power to feel their best?
Well, I think the big thing, over time is I've seen so much pain in my career. I see
Mm.
so many people that they think that a surgery or a medication or self medications or alcohol or, whatever it is, we're medicating. When the reality is that if you could help them take a couple steps and really start seeing what the benefits are. I had a woman in Cincinnati, Ohio, years ago. I did a event, and I did 3 years in a row. And she started her journey at 65 years old. She weighed 370 pounds. She was on 16 medications, went to 3 medications, lost almost 200 pounds. I've never seen that transformation at starting at age 65. But
Amazing.
she said, "You're one of the first guys that ever talked about, take one step at a time." And
Hmm.
then I got in the emotional piece, which is the why. The why is the jet fuel. As men, we always talk about the how,
Hmm.
and reality is you got to start with the why, and then you
Hmm.
can. The how is not hard. Like
Hmm.
she wanted to tell me what her how was. I already knew it. She quit drinking diet soda. She started drinking water. She started doing water therapy. I already knew the how she did it. But
Yeah.
what I wanted to know is the why, and the why was her husband. Her husband
Mm.
was had a love for motorcycles, and she hadn't ridden a motorcycle in 40 years. So when
Mm.
you tap into that why for people, then you start creating the how will follow. And
Yeah.
so I want to develop not only a beginning of the why, which is the, self-reflection, self-awareness, how to build habits, how to build steps. So section one is all about behavior, because you got to get
Mhm.
that right first.
Mhm.
And then the rest is the how. So
Mhm.
I get everything into, I talk about blood work. I talk about, how do you build habits? How do you sleep better? The list goes on, but that's the gist of it. I wanted to get the beginning where the whole book is a resource, but I want them to read the beginning, and
Yeah.
that's behavior. And once they
Yeah.
get the behavior and understand it, then we can tap into the how. Because
Yeah.
as men, we always want to go to the how. Just do
Absolutely.
that. Well,
Just tell me.
that, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I get into the why and the behavior end of it.
Well, let's jump into the why just a little bit further. Like what might be some of the questions for the guy listening today? He has a chance to sit and chat with you, and he hasn't been able to tap into that real power of the why. What might be some of the things that you might lead him through to find that?
Well, the first thing we talk about in behavior change is you got to have some awareness. You said it earlier. I just don't
Mhm.
feel good. I have brain
Mhm.
fog. I'm heavy. I got that. Okay. Once they get a little bit of that, because everybody's got
Mhm.
blind spots. But then
Yep.
for there, we start saying, okay, what do you truly want? Well, I want to have an amazing life, and I have this family, or I want to be a better husband, or I want to be a better father. I want to be,
Mhm.
better with the Lord, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Then you start really getting into that, and then you get into the why, which is okay. So now, what's a short term, what's a long term. One of my whys in my world is that I had amazing grandparents. I'm up at
Mm.
Douglas Lake, and my grandparents were, I was up here in the summer. I kind of want to be that same grandparent for my
Mm.
kids. So once you start tapping into it, because everybody's got one,
That's
and
great.
you just get a search for it. Once you tap into it, that will get you through the mud. So
Mm.
when times get tough, which they all will,
Yep.
it's going to get muddy. The rain's going to come in.
Yep.
Once they have that why that drags them out, like that's the gal that lost 200 pounds. She kept thinking about her husband and his love for motorcycles, and
Mm.
so once you do that, because that to me, that's how you get people to get unstuck.
That's
You got
right.
to tap
That's
into their
so
why.
good. That's so good. Well, and I think it's a good transition maybe into this thing that you talk about in the book, this journey to change, which I think was really great. They're like the 5 stages you talk about, the honeymoon phase to the valley of despair to habits become rituals. Kind of give us like what that journey looks like, because I think the trap for many of us is all of a sudden there's that jolt of energy. I found my why. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband, a better
Yep.
follower of Jesus, right? And then week 2 hits. Right. So walk us through the journey to change a little bit, and where those stuck points happen where we can maybe get unstuck.
So when I kind of end this with many of my presentations is they're all pumped up, they're excited, whatever, and now I'm going to tell them, all right, so this is kind of what the journey can look like. You're all pumped up today. That's a honeymoon stage. We've all been there.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks go by. Now it's Monday morning. The kids are screaming, I'm busy, whatever. And now the honeymoon's over. And everybody starts to laugh. They get that. But then we move into the valley of despair. And this is where people give
Mhm.
up
Yep.
because it's too hard. I can't do it, whatever. And where I tell them is that the valley of despair, you have to have some emotional piece to it.
Hmm.
But then from there, just make this simple. You said it. Okay, let's build one little habit.
Hmm.
Let's do those push-ups or those body weight squats, or let's walk a little more, drink a little bit more water, whatever it might be. But let's pick one thing you're going to focus on. And
Yep.
now that builds into a habit. And then now you have, I always call it my morning ritual. I have every one of my clients, I call it the first 15%. I stole that from a friend of mine, Matthew Cross. But if you can get the first 15% of your day right,
Yep.
maybe it's reading the Bible, maybe it's breathing, maybe it's, what are you doing in the morning nutritionally, whatever it is, it's not that hard. And they're like, is that all I have to do? I go, let's get this first 15% down.
Yeah.
And that will help you in this journey
Yes.
develop these habits and rituals. And now I got the first 15%. I'm not giving it up. I played golf with a guy the other week, and he's a type 2 diabetic. And he said, I got some bumpy roads here, but I never give up my first 15%. And no,
Mm,
I'm no longer a type 2 diabetic. So that's
mm,
the power of getting that, understanding the journey, but also how do you develop some habits and wrap them around that. And now the
yeah,
rituals, you don't think about it. Like I
that's
always
right.
say, how many of you put your right shoe on first today? And people like, they don't know. And I said, well, look down, you see you have two shoes. That's a ritual you don't even think about anymore.
That's right.
And that's the key. You got to
Yeah.
build rituals that's not so hard to
Yep.
to execute.
Yeah. Almost like what's the easiest thing you can do even on your worst day? Or the minimum you could do on your worst day?
That's gold right there.
Hmm.
If I can get people, like people say, well, how much water should you drink a day? Well, people say, well, half your body weight in ounces is great. I always tell every person that I work with, unless you're super small, 50 ounces a day. So if you weigh 200 pounds, shouldn't I drink 100 ounces? Yeah, you could, but I want you to just start with 50.
I
Like,
love that.
I can do that. I said, because
Yep.
if I said you have to drink 100 ounces, you're probably not going to do it. So
That's
let's
right.
get really successful with these little baby steps, and then that will expand. And now the how will just continue to grow.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we have in this ministry, we have 4 principles that we talk about, and I've positioned them as I am statements. Like I am a man of honor, and I keep my commitments that I've made. I'm a man of discipline. I do the hard right things like that, right? I'm a man of strength is one of them, and I'm a man of joy. Now, I don't always feel like that guy. But what's interesting is every time I take an action and do the thing I didn't feel like doing, I am more of that guy who I really want to be, right? And I think there's something really powerful about that of just like, this is who I am. And every time I do it, especially at that valley of despair, every time I work out and I really just don't feel like it, my body hurts, I'm tired, whatever, right? That's like the most important days of my life, because if you do it through there, then it proves to me that I really am a man of discipline. And there's something really powerful in that.
Well, you're building that muscle. You're
Hmm.
building that muscle. That muscle is your brain. You're building that muscle. That self-talk that we all have, like you just said it. Sometimes I just don't feel like it today. I'm tired
Hmm.
today. Okay. But then that muscle, if I can just move my body for 2 minutes, I'm good.
That's it.
I'd rather have that to
Yep.
eat than that. Like, well, that's going to last for about 10 seconds.
That's
Not saying
right.
I can't have it. If I want it, get it, be good with it. But you're starting to build that muscle.
Yeah.
And
So
that's a
good.
muscle. That's a muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like we do overcomplicate health and wellness and go like, okay, now again, it's the whole, now I got to go join CrossFit. Sorry, CrossFitters. It's like, that becomes like this thing of
Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah. No,
okay. Now I'm serious,
right. Mm-hmm.
but it's a problem for us. We're going way too far, too fast. You'll read Rest, Eat, Move and go, holy crap, I'm so far from this. But I think your approach would be, look, I'm not asking you to do the whole book. I'm asking you to do 1 or 2 things. What are some of the starting points for somebody who's literally maybe day 1 today?
Well, day one is the sequence. So if you looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it all begins with if I'm looking at from a health standpoint, I always tell people you got to get the sequence right. That's what
Mm,
we're facing today. We don't have enough rest. We're not
okay.
intentional about our recovery.
Yeah.
So step one, when I sit down with clients, when you talk about stress and anxiety and depression and they can't sleep and this and that, I go, let's just start with the basics. We got to start with the stress button and understand it's physical. So if you feel threatened in any shape or form, financially, relationships, whatever, your stress button's on all day long. That's not a good thing. So I always start with, let's get the understanding a little bit more about stress and why you need to a little bit more intentional about your rest. Let's take a look
Mm,
at your breath. Most people breathe through their mouth, they breathe through their chest, and they breathe too fast. So, like a
mm,
Seinfeld episode, you do the opposite. You breathe through the nose, you use your diaphragm at your belly, and you slow it down. If you can actually just change your breath, is the fastest way to change and calm the mind, relax the body. It's the fastest way to change your state. You see that
mm,
in all athletics, or
mhm,
you watch your kids sometimes.
mhm,
So I always start with understanding a little bit about rest and rejuvenation and all that, then understand stress. But then we say, okay, what's the strategies? Strategy number one is we got to look at how you breathe and being
mm,
more intentional about your breath. Then
mhm,
from there, we move into sleep. Are you planning your sleep? Sleeping is one of the most devastating problems we face in the United States today. We're not sleeping as a society.
Mm.
So then we get into like some basic, we talked about in our podcast that comes out next week, but are you looking at your phone before you go to bed? And are you looking at your phone when you first get up in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
If you just gave yourself a little 30 minutes in the front and 30 minutes at the end, the beginning of the day, that's a great step. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we make it too hard. Should I take melatonin? The list goes on. Should I take a gummy? You're way out there. We're not doing
Mm-hmm.
the source of the problem. The last one is we look at your schedules and your pace and space of life because everybody's in different season. But
Mm-hmm.
that's how I begin with everybody is I start with a rest bucket, look at where they're at, and like what can we start attacking. And usually we begin with just planning their sleep a little bit more and then work on their breath. And then many times they have to look at their schedules because people in our world today, we're just constantly
Yep.
overscheduled. So
Yep.
that's how I begin with the rest piece.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick break from the show to share with you 3 things that I think could help you to become more of the man that God meant for you to be: a better husband, a better father, and a better follower of Jesus Christ. 3 things, totally free, that I think can help you. Number 1 is our podcast. Hit the subscribe button, share them with a friend. That makes a big difference, not only in your life, but in somebody else that you care about as well. And it helps us to reach more men. Number 2, we do a free weekly newsletter that is short, it's concise, it deals with just one key question and then 3 simple action items each week that will help you to get in the fight in a really practical way. You can find that at getinthefight.club/newsletter. And then lastly, you can join our Fight Club community. This is a free private app for Christian men only, where you can talk to guys and get involved with guys' lives from all around the world who are just like you, trying to get in the fight to be better men for Christ. You get things like daily devos, weekly challenges, monthly gatherings, small groups, so much more. It's kind of like a Facebook group, but exclusively for Christian men, and it's totally awesome, and it's totally free. Getinthefight.club/join and check it out. Get more today. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, get our newsletter, get involved in our Fight Club. Totally free things to help you to get in the fight and win today. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. Yeah, so I want to delve into that a little bit more. I mean, sleep has been a major issue in my own life. So even as you're saying it, I'm like, and as I read the book too, like it really was eye-opening to me to read about the seriousness of trying to fix my sleep. Like what are some of the impacts of not having enough rest and sleep? What does that do to us? Why do we need to be concerned about that? Because I think some guys are going to be like, you know what, I don't need sleep. Whatever.
Well, if you looked at complete being your best, the fastest way to age the mind and the body is lack of sleep. So every creature on the planet sleeps.
Mm.
Giraffes will sleep, 20 minutes a day.
Mm.
Lions will sleep 15 hours a day. The brown bat sleeps 20 hours a day.
Mm.
Everything sleeps. In the United States, if you go back in 1879 when the light bulb was invented, we were averaging about 10 hours of sleep a night. Today, it's right around 6.
Mm.
We've lost 4 hours in that space.
Yeah.
So when you look at brain health, one of the greatest things to do for brain health is you have to get enough rapid eye movement sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And you get very little rapid eye movement in the first 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So people say to me all the time, I don't need that much sleep. Well, you do if you want to have a healthy brain. We've never seen more dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's than we do today. So if you're not sleeping, you will have. My mother died of Alzheimer's. My mom was not a sleeper. So first thing I got to convince people on is you need more sleep than you probably think you do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you look at hormones, and the men are all talking about testosterone replacement therapy and this and that. You will have hormonal imbalances if you don't get enough sleep, because that's when your hormones, testosterone, growth hormone, are made in the 3rd stage of sleep. So when I work with people that have all these hormonal things, like, hey, should I take TRT? Like, let's just start with how does your body make these hormones? It does it through sleep. So sleep repairs the body, repairs the mind, controls appetite. I mean, you name it, it does it. And we all know when we had a great night of sleep, how we feel, right? So that's one thing is selling them on the benefits of sleep. And then from there, we get into the how of sleep. And that's what people are struggling with today is they don't know how to sleep. And a big part of that is their nervous system is out of balance. Their brain is going too fast. And so when they go to bed disturbed, they're going to wake up. So now it's 2:30 and I can't get back to sleep, or I can't get to sleep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then you look at what foods are. There's a lot to it.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I always do with all my, when I'm working with people or talking to audiences, let's just start with the self-awareness. Are
Yep.
you happy with the amount of sleep you get?
Mm.
And number two, it's like I got to convince you that you need probably more than you do. If you get
Mm.
in sleep, we have this thing called sleep pressure. Nobody ever talks about it.
Mm-mm.
Sleep pressure is that by your own devices, if you had nothing to stimulate you, you would, like your dog. My dog Floyd's here with us. He's naturally going to go down when the sun goes down.
Mm.
So he's not watching Netflix. He's not on his computer. He's not doing all that stuff. So what we do is we bring in the caffeine, the energy drinks, the Netflix, the computer, the phone. And now our sleep pressure is just put over to the back burner.
Mm.
When reality is we're not getting in our natural sequence. And again, life is what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
But I find a lot of people are not even aware of this thing called sleep pressure. They
Yeah.
just, so that's how you begin with sleep, is you really have the self-awareness. Where am I? And then
Mm-hmm.
just look at some of the hygiene. How much are you on your computer before you go to bed? I always tell people sleep's like landing a plane. Nobody would ever land the plane super abruptly. It's a glide.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we not glide into bed? We don't. We go from watching The Sopranos or whatever, and we dive right into, I'm looking at my phone, I'm diving right
Yep.
into bed. And
Yeah.
so my stress hormones, cortisol, epinephrine, those are on. And then your sleep hormones are put off to the side, which is, melatonin, serotonin. And if serotonin's out of balance, which is again back to the nervous system and gut health. So there's a lot to sleep, but we have to
Mm-hmm.
start with some basic,
Yep.
what's the temperature in your room? Are you eating enough magnesium foods? Are you disturbed before you go to bed? What's the nervous
Mm.
system like? But if
Yep.
we can start with some basic habits, I had a guy that texted me yesterday. He said he took an Epsom salt bath and he slept 90 minutes more than he normally sleeps.
Is that right?
Okay. Oh, Epsom salts are high in magnesium. So,
Interesting.
so sleep's a big problem.
Yeah.
Taking all these medications for sleep is not the answer. The answer is in you. Again, we start, and then people can, believe it or not, people can sleep better. I have so many
Mm.
people like, I only sleep 4 hours a night. Well, you can do better than that. You can, and again, we're not going to 4 to 8. We're going to 4 to 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
That's steps.
Mm-hmm. Can you speak to this, Chris? Like the REM sleep is that deep rest, right? It's the rapid eye movement part of sleep, I believe. And correct me where I'm off here, but does sleep go through REM and back out of it throughout the night? And it seems like in reading the book, the way I understood it, that you were saying like part of the reason getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep may not be enough is because you didn't get enough of those cycles of the deep sleep. Is that the issue? So it's not like you're not getting in.
Well, let's say most people agree it's 4 stages of sleep. Some say 5, but anyway, let's just use 4. So
Okay.
stage 1 and 2, you go through relatively fast. We've all been in a movie theater. We've been on an airplane. We're out,
Mm-hmm.
right? First,
Yeah.
so that's stage 1 and 2. You go through quickly, and then you go into stage 3, which is deep sleep. In deep sleep, if you have adolescent kids at home, you can't wake them up. They're in deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's when your hormones are made. That's when your
Okay.
muscles are repairing, connective tissue, the body's recovering, rehealing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into stage 4, which is rapid eye movement. This is when we dream.
Okay.
But in all 4 stages, you go through every 90 to 110 minutes. You spend very little time in REM sleep in the first 4 hours a night. But then as the time goes on, you spend less again, the body's so stinking smart,
Mm-hmm.
that the body doesn't need that recovery now. Now we need to let the brain recover. And that's the glymphatic system with a G. So when you are spending more time in the glymphatic system, allows the brain to take out the trash, and that's
Mm-hmm.
amyloid. So now the brain is healing itself. So as we get into hour 6, hour 7, hour 8, we're spending most all the time in REM sleep. So when I show this graph, first 4 hours, you get a little tiny bit. 8 hours, you get, it goes way up.
Yes.
And that's where we need to get more of that. And if you looked at some of the best athletes in the world, LeBron James, Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt sleeps 12 hours when he's competing.
Wow.
LeBron James is really adamant about 10 hours. I'm not saying people need to sleep 10 hours, but if you're sleeping 5 hours, let's try to move closer to 5 to 6 hours of sleep, five
Yeah.
and a half to six. So that's how it begins.
I thought
But
it that was it's such yeah, it's such a fascinating section, and it really hit me hard of like people will I'll say it all the time, like, I don't know if I've ever had 8 hours. Like I can't remember sleeping 8 hours in my life. Even if I sleep well, I might sleep hard for 4 to 5 and then wake up, and then I'm up and down watching, look what time is it for every hour for the next 3 or 4 hours. Like that's super normal for me. So yeah, I think a lot of people are dealing with that and trying to solve this. This is like one that's really heavy on my brain. I realize like it's a big deal when you read your book, which again I hope people do. It's a big, big deal.
it's a big deal. But again, I think that's where you begin. It really begins with the nervous system, getting the nervous system more in balance. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the key for sleep, in my opinion. And then you
Mm-hmm.
bring in all this stuff, the environment, but really landing the plane. What am I doing before? What am I doing after? What's the circadian rhythms? There's so much to it,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to make it simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And the simpler is just understanding like what is my normal routine, and then how do we tweak that routine.
Yep.
I always tell my clients, give me exactly how you go to bed, and they'll show it, and I'm like, I can see 10 things they need to change. I'm only going to change one.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, if it's 10, everybody's going to feel too overwhelmed. The brain doesn't allow that. They're like, okay, I can't do any of it.
Like this guy said, I said to him, have you ever taken an Epsom salt bath? And he said, no. I said, okay, we're going to experiment here. I don't want you changing much. All I want you to do is, I don't want you to be on your phone for 30 minutes before you go to bed. And I want you to take an Epsom salt bath before you go to bed twice a week. And
Interesting.
he sent it to me. I didn't ask him anything else. Take 2 cups of Epsom salts, put them in a bath, soak in there. It will help your connective tissue, your muscles, and it will help you sleep. So
Yeah.
I think he's kind of sold.
I think I'm going to go buy some actually
Yep,
after this
yep,
and see if
yep.
we can figure it out.
And any grocery store you can get
Yeah.
Epsom salts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Again, I just encourage guys, like you're going to want to read this book. There's a lot that's here, and then you're going to want to connect with Chris and Matt and his team here. But sleep's a big deal for, again, and this is all I want guys to remember. Again, like you want to live life abundantly. Christ, like number one, our body is made by God. Like that's our proposition here, and He is the author of it. He created it. Like the reason you can heal yourself is because God created it that way. And if you line up with how He made you, you really can live more abundantly. Why are we not? Because we're totally working against the way He made us, right? And so you want to be a better father. You want to like emotionally be able to control yourself better after you've worked all day and you come home and the kids are crazy. You're not going to do that when you feel your worst and you're caffeined out like crazy and eating junk food on the way home. And right, like you can be a better dad.
It will
That's
catch
worth
up. Yeah.
trying.
It catches up. So that's the key. But you hit it right that it doesn't have to be overnight, but we could start moving towards that line. And I try to get all my clients, and you might be a little bit wired to not, there's different types of chronotypes. Chronotype is how people sleep.
Yeah,
Some are a little bit more challenged than others, but at the same time, everybody can get better at it.
that's it. Yeah, yep. Just getting better. I think it's a great way to approach it. How can I just get a little bit better?
It's a little
Right. It's
better.
that same thing.
Yep.
I think your conversation on space was really interesting, and you talked about creating space in our lives, and I'm like laughing reading it, thinking like that's something most guys would say. I don't have any of. I don't have any space, right? And so you talked about micro, medium, and macro breaks. Can you explain that? Because I think that could be that little idea from the book could be life changing for guys.
Yeah, so I think if I wrote my book over again, I would probably put pace and space a little bit more on the front end. But
Mm-hmm.
everybody, if you looked at the amount of pace you have in your life is different than mine. I turned
Mm-hmm.
68. You're kind of in the
48.
you're right in the midst of it, right?
Yeah,
I look at
yeah,
my kids. My kids are 38, going to be 39. They each have 3 kids, their careers, their kids, their families, everything else. They're in a different season of their life. So number one, you have to recognize the season of your life. And I told my daughter the other day, because her middle son is more like grandpa. I was kind of a problem child when I was 3 years old. And I told her, I said, honey, you're in a season. You just gotta,
Mhm.
you and your husband got to work together. This is season. So number one, recognize the season,
Mhm.
recognize the pace of your life. Do you actually like the pace? And number two, do you have enough space to handle the pace?
Mhm.
I talked about space between the notes in our podcast. And if you took any song and you jam the notes together, it's not going to sound right. You got to have the space.
Mhm.
And we all know when we look at our calendars, we have nothing going on this weekend. How do we feel? So,
Mhm.
step one is really looking at the pace of your life and the space. And then you're saying, okay, what can I do about that? Now we start planning, and I would start planning some micro breaks. Micro breaks are 30-second to 60-second breaks during your day.
Mhm.
Everybody can do it, it's just
Yep.
intentional. The medium breaks might be that Epsom salt bath, or maybe getting a relaxing a massage, or going for a walk with your wife, or whatever it might be. And then we have a bigger break, and that's going to be get away for a 4 days where I'm really not. I don't have the kids. I don't. I'm just allowing my brain to recover. But you're intentional about this.
Yep.
I did a conference in Boston for MIT, and it was all these CFOs. And I came right out at the beginning. I only had 30 minutes on the big stage. And I said, hey, how many of you are intentional about your rest? And you could hear a pin drop. They're like, yeah, I'm not. So it's no different when you look at the pace and the space, just being a little more intentional about your calendar and plugging some things in. If you maybe one day a month, you take an afternoon off.
Mhm.
And then you look at your calendar that next day and you're like, how do I feel when I have that afternoon off? You feel amazing.
So
So I
good.
think we just need to be more intentional about, plugging in some space in our calendars, in
I
our
love
life.
it.
Yeah.
I think it was so good because I think a lot of guys will approach this with all or nothing mentality, whether it's exercise, space, rest, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And instead, they're like, I can't afford a week off. And that's how they think of rest. Like, I need a vacation. Well, most of us come back from vacation exhausted. So that doesn't even work, right?
Oh,
Like the idea of 30 to 60 seconds, just a couple times throughout the day, setting a reminder, whatever it might be for you. Maybe it's just in the evening, maybe whatever, right? I think this is such a great approach because we do need to fix it. I think everybody would say, do you have a problem with space? Yes. What are you doing about it? Nothing. Should you? Yes. But I don't know how. A micro and a medium break, let's start there, right? Pick one of those,
it's
right?
like people say all the time. When we had this personal training program at the Michigan Athletic Club, some members would say, "Oh, this trainer's so tough."
Mm,
Well, any trainer can be tough if they give you no rest.
mm-hmm,
If I have you do 5 push-ups and you rest for a minute between 5 push-ups, it's not a big deal.
right.
But if I have you do five with 5 second rest, five more with 5 second rest, it ain't going to last long, right?
Yep. Yep.
And that's what we don't realize in the United States, that we go 9,000 miles an hour. All you need is a little bit of recovery, and that allows the body to reset, because that's the
Yep.
nervous system.
Yep.
When I work with clients, their nervous system they're like, I don't understand this nervous system. You have fight or flight on one side, and you have rest and digest on the other, and they're both important.
Yeah.
Addison's disease, JFK had it. Addison's disease is he didn't have the fight or flight hormones anymore.
Hmm.
They didn't, so he had to, and so a big part of that was he was so burned out
Hmm.
that now he didn't even produce the hormones that made him run from the bear.
Hmm.
And then we have the other side of the equation. So these are actually diseases of stress.
Hmm.
So we need to make sure we're getting enough rest, rejuvenation, and these micro breaks, medium breaks are really not a hard thing to do, but it's intentional.
Yeah. I bet you hear this all the time. I certainly do for men that write in or call or are part of our community, but they'll say, man, I'll say, like, why aren't you doing whatever it is that you want to do? Like, I want to be a better husband, father, whatever it is. What's keeping you back? The answer is, I'm just so busy. Like across the board, that is the answer of the American life. I'm just so busy. And it's like, we have to address that. We can't just keep saying that. And for guys listening, man, I'm telling you, if that's your MO, you're stressing yourself out, you're not being your best, and you can live a better life, right? I think that's the whole message of what you're saying, Chris.
Well, I had a guy that works with a large financial company, and he's having trouble sleeping. And I said the same thing. And every time you talk to me, you're too busy.
Mm-hmm.
So we can keep having the same conversation, but
Exactly.
you know, I don't know what to tell you, because until you change your narrative,
Yep.
and to me, I don't want to get into, but my mom used to say, I know you're so busy. Mom, I'm not busy. You're my mom. I'm not
Right.
busy. Okay. I have nothing going on.
That's right.
You asked me earlier today, what do you got going on? I have nothing going on except for you.
I
Right.
love that. Yep.
So people have to just step back and,
Yeah.
I understand the president of the United States is busy,
Yeah.
but I'm not the president of the United States.
That's
And
right.
so if you constantly use the narrative that I'm too busy, to me, that's not a high performer. That's somebody that's not thriving. I would
Hmm.
step back, and if I was mentoring you, I'm like, let's not use that. Let's be smarter. If you
Hmm.
were if you were saying I'm too busy, then you're not smart with your time and your schedule, and you
Yep.
know. So there's a lot to that from a performance standpoint. Being a better dad, a
Yep.
better, the list goes on. So let's not use the narrative anymore. I'm too busy.
I love that. Well, and you've mentioned wanting to be a great grandfather, and I love that. Like, so you're 68, I'm 48, and what's interesting in this conversation to me is like we are very much throwing away, in my case, being your age one day, Lord willing. If I make it to 68, but I never get past the I'm so busy treadmill, then I'm going to miss out on some really great years potentially where I could have been there. I could have been more present. I could have been able to get on the ground and play with my grandkids or help them move because they're going to move 1,000 times, And it's just, I think we're so short-term thinkers that we need to like project ahead a little bit and be like, I want to be able to run a great race, not just right now in this busy season. Yeah, it's busy, but I want to be
Yeah.
able to be and be like you. I want to be a great
Well,
grandpa.
what you're saying is absolutely gold. We got to, what are we planting today? What seed am I planting
Hmm.
today? And we don't have to have the harvest tomorrow. We're just planting the seeds. And I think if we look at it that way, relationships, our health, these are all, our wealth. It's all seeds we're planting, and we don't have to run the race in a sprint.
That's
And
right.
to me, you want to make the race that it's enjoyable. People say all the time, I know you love exercise. Well, I like how it makes my mind feel. I
Hmm.
like the process. I like it, but it's not some days I love it. Some days I
Hmm.
just know it's beneficial for me to be my best.
Hmm.
So I think that's the message that you're saying right now is that this is a marathon, and I'm planting the seeds along the way and enjoying the journey.
Mm. I love what you just said there too, Chris, because I think what a lot of guys will do is they'll go, "Oh, Chris is a bodybuilder. He's that guy. I'm just not like him." Oh, Nate's an athlete, or used to be. I'm not now, but used to be an athlete. So he has something I don't. Like the messaging that we tell ourselves like that is just ridiculous, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had some clients the other day who were training. They're like, well, and they were in their early 50s, and they're like, well, we're not like you. Oh, wait a minute. Let's stop right there.
Yeah,
What is
pause.
that? I have no. Let's pause for a second. Y- Again, it's the narrative I'm telling
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
And I was telling my clients, every one of you is an athlete. Let's. Have you ever liked to play some activity?
yep.
We're trying to talk about movement, I talk a lot about what activities you like to do. Well,
Mm,
let's get excited about training for that activity, whether it's paddleball or snow skiing or working in the yard or whatever it is. Like today, I'll be
yep.
using the chainsaw cutting. I got to be somewhat fit to do the stuff up here, or it just doesn't get done, and I
That's
can't throw
right.
that all on my wife. So
Yep.
those are drivers back to your why. Like, hey,
Hmm.
let's change the narrative. I'm not busy. I'm not an
Hmm.
athlete. Let's get into the more, let's, again, the world's tough enough.
That's right.
The world's tough enough. We need to be more positive on these things we say to ourselves.
Absolutely. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like each day we kind of pray through, like, I'm a man of honor. I am a man of discipline. I am a man of strength. I am a man of joy. There's something in changing the narrative. And people are like, well, that's just, self-help. And I'm like, look, I'm a Christian. I'm not self-help. I'm Christ help first.
Right.
But but to pretend like that the words you speak to yourself don't influence the way you feel and act is baloney. It's totally crazy. So yeah, I'm not taking away that it's God in me, but I have to change the way I talk to me. It'll change everything.
And that thought, again, back to stress, how does something that's a thought physically affect 80% of our healthcare? That's a thought.
Exactly.
okay, so let's change how we talk to us. And again, sometimes when I'm playing golf, I have some bad thoughts that I say to myself. But but at the same time, when I'm
Okay.
playing my best, it's not that
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
It's much more positive, more
Yeah.
forgiving. And so that's what we all have to be more forgiving, more uplifting. You
Yeah.
said that.
Exactly right. I want to be really great with your time here. We'll start to wind this down, and maybe at some point I'll just have to bring you back because like we could talk about food for like the whole thing, but it's such a big thing. And I love that your approach is always like, don't go change, don't go change everything, but like change one thing. Like if
Mhm.
we had to just kind of like, let's just keep the idea of food and diet because that just becomes a big, big conversation. What are a couple of the simple things? Where do guys start today, right? Rather than going like, I'm going to go keto, I'm going to go
Right. Right.
carnivore, right? What do you say to all of that?
So the first thing is I would get this food target, and I designed this in 1994. So the red area is the
Mhm.
processed food, the green area is the whole foods, carbs, proteins, and fats, beverages. And everybody can get this for a website. I'll give you a link to it. It's
Yep.
free. Anybody can get this. But I designed this because it's all about begins with food quality. And so if you learn one thing from me, it would be called the source. Where does it come from?
Hmm.
So nothing's off limit if it's close to the source. So when you look at carbohydrates, you got potatoes, you got ancient grains like oatmeal, you got fruits, vegetables, these types of things. People are like, well, I'm on a low carb diet. Well, you would never take fruit away from your 3-year-old. Well, why are we taking it away as an adult? So I'm
Hmm.
not talking about the Twizzlers and the Doritos. We're talking about the source. Where does it come from? Proteins come from animal and plant. Just because it's a protein does not mean it's healthy for you. I'm not a fan of protein powders. They're tough on the kidneys. Just eating real, if you like chicken and bison and whatever it is, steak, you got all sorts of vegetables, nuts and seeds. These are all, and then your healthy fats, coconut, extra virgin olive oil, all sorts of nuts and seeds. And then we're a big fan of cod liver oil because it's high
Hmm.
in vitamin D, it's high in vitamin A. So we actually have our own cod liver oil, flax seeds, but really gets back to improving the quality of what you're eating.
Hmm.
So if you looked in your refrigerator and you said, okay, I got X, how can I make that better? Can I get better mayonnaise? Yes. Can I get better ketchup? Yes. Can I get better creamer in my coffee? Yes. So we're not taking things away. We
Yep.
just upgrade them. And so
Nice.
we even have a handout. I'll send it to you. It's called
Hmm.
Brand Favorites, stuff that you could buy in any grocery store. They're just better versions of chips, crackers, whatever.
Hmm.
And then
Great.
from there, we move into, we start with just what are you drinking? Are you drinking enough water? So most of my clients I work with, most people do not drink enough water. So then
Yeah.
we look at their beverages. Are they drinking energy drinks and too much soda pop or whatever it might be? So that's kind of how it begins. We
Hmm.
start with basically understanding the source, get the quality going, and then start diving into what we eat and drink. And what's the plan? Like, are you fasting overnight for 12 to 14 hours?
Hmm.
Again, you can be intermittent fasting, but to me, you start missing nutrients. So, what's easiest for most people? You fast 12 to 14 hours overnight. It's not hard
Yep.
to do.
Yep.
So those are the things I start with
Hmm.
initially. We're big fans, like I said, as the cod liver oil. We're big fans of spirulina chlorella, which is comes superfoods. But when you just start building out the plan, back to the first 15%,
Hmm.
get the morning right. When you start eating, when you stop eating, what's the spacing? What's the planning? We don't think about it. We just
Hmm.
react.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
So
it's
good.
different, it's different than the rest. It's just being a little bit more intentional about what you
Yeah.
eat. And the same thing goes when we go into, am I intentional about my movement?
Yeah, and let's kind of finish there with the movement side because I think it's the same thing, right? I love everything you're saying. Again, go get the book, Rest, Eat, Move. But the idea again of movement is not CrossFit. It's not first step, right? It's it was kind of again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew I needed help, and I was like, I can walk to the end of the road and back, and I can do 10 push-ups. I think it's probably similar to what you would say, right? What
Yes,
can you
on
do?
the back of the food target, we have these. It's
Okay.
called dynamic warm up. No equipment required.
Yeah.
2 to 3 minutes. I did it this morning already. It's something I do every day. I just start loosening up my body. If you did that and a little bit of walking, we're on our way.
Absolutely.
But I think that's where we begin. And then you say, okay, what about strength training? Because we talk about Fountain of Youth. I try to teach everybody a perfect push up. Could be modified on your knees, could be against the wall. Can you do 5? And then we do a body weight squat. So if I can get you to stretch out, I get you to walk a little bit. I do my little push ups, I do my little squats, no equipment required.
Yep.
There's no barriers.
That's
So
right.
so then you just start building, and then you try to find activities and movements that people enjoy.
So good.
Because you got to enjoy the process, because if you don't enjoy it, if you think the step mill is the exercise of choice and you hate it, you're not going to do it.
That's right. That's right.
So, and then depending on where people are at and their fitness level, you create progressions along the way, because it's all progressions. Like I'll tell
Yeah.
people they'll come out of a hip replacement or knee replacement. Well, that would be a different movement pattern than somebody that's 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the progressions come. You make it enjoyable. We try to make this way too hard.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The way we talk to ourselves, the way that we approach it, like little fixes to your sleep. Maybe just a few minutes less of the phone or the devices or any of that kind of stuff. A little bit more thoughtful micro breaks throughout the day. Being intentional with the food, just upgrade, right? Don't take away, just upgrade. Like
just upgrade. And
all
I'll
of
see some stuff on that. It's just again, that's where it begins.
that's
Because if you
right.
start taking things away from people, again, the goal is to develop habits that you enjoy.
Yeah, and just again, I hope guys listening will recognize their own issues here, but it's either like let's take everything away or let's go 100 miles an hour all the way to the end, right? And we're like,
Yeah,
that never works.
it doesn't work. And I have so many men that say I'm an all or nothing guy. I said, well,
Again,
that's what you say
narrative.
yourself. That's
Yeah,
your narrative. We need to change that mindset.
yeah,
Like, I'm not saying it's like you can't have alcohol. You just can't have 15 beers if you want to get where you want to be. Well,
exactly.
I can't stop at 4. Okay, let's step back. We have other things we need to work on. So
That's right.
it back to the narrative that it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
It's so great. Chris, I mean, I could talk to you for so long and I won't because we want to be really respectful of your day. But this book, again, is so great. Rest, Eat, Move. You have the power to feel your best. And again, in this particular podcast, I mean, we're just saying, look, God made you. He's made your body. He's given this as a gift. You're needed in the world. You've got purpose and meaning, a life that matters to you and to so many other people. And not giving it your best is crazy. And again, we don't always know that we're going to get 20 more years. You don't know if you get 20 more minutes.
Right.
And so I think like this idea of like getting back to like trying to live abundantly, like Christ talked about, we see so few people doing it, and it's worth pursuing. So Chris, I'm so grateful for you, for what you guys do is just truly incredible to help people live their best. Can you kind of wrap up and close on Target Living, what you guys do there, how guys listening today can connect with you or get more resource or help?
Well, I think the easiest thing is just come to our website. It's just ontargetliving.com. We have a phone number there. We actually have people behind so if you have any questions, my email, I'm going to give you my email now, which is my name, Chris Johnson, all one word, at ontargetliving.com. You have a question, you want to talk to me, my son will tell you. I'll respond to you, or probably even get you on the phone. But we're here to help you. We're on a mission to help people be and feel their best. So again, start with a website. We have lots of downloads. It's free. All of our content is free.
Mm-hmm.
We have an audiobook. It's free. We have a system. It's free. So all of our content is free. Now the book, yeah, you pay $15 for this because again, it's costing us money to ship it to you, whatever. But all our content's free, and that's our mission. Our mission is to have free content, videos, podcasts. Our podcast comes out every week. It's called Rest, Eat, Move. So we're on a mission to help you any way we can. So thanks for having me, Nate.
It's been totally my pleasure. And I'm sure for guys listening, it's going to be like, wow, that guy is amazing. And you are. So thanks again, Chris, for joining us and for doing what you're doing. And, again, for you guys that are listening, connect with Chris. Like, how cool is that? That this is just a genuine mission to serve and to help. And so go to On Target Living. I'll put links in the show notes. You guys can go there. And again, you'll find all of that if you look in the show notes here. I'll put his book there. You can click on it and buy the book directly, you'll be glad that you did. But again, like, I hope that you're encouraged when you hear this, and I hope the big why of being a better husband, a better father, a better follower of Christ, I hope it connects. Like, it's a big enough why to do something, to make little changes, to upgrade little pieces here and there. So I hope that you will start small, pick one thing maybe that stood out to you. And if you've got questions about it, connect with Chris, but do the work, get in the fight, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.